For my culminating unit, I got the opportunity to read Silence of the Lambs, a novel written by Thomas Harris. It was originally published in 1988 and was cinematically adapted in 1991 by director Jonathan Demme. Overall, the movie received extremely positive reviews by critics and even went home with the title of Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Luckily for you all who plan to read or watch Silence of the Lambs, the scene I chose to do actually takes place relatively at the beginning. So, up until my chosen clip, we have only been introduced to Clarice Starling, Jack Crawford, and Dr. Chilton. Clarice Starling is the lead of the film and is a student training to be in the FBI. She is played by Jodie Foster, who, like the film, won an Academy Award for Best Actress. Anyways, Clarice is recruited by Jack Crawford, played by Scott Glenn, an agent who works for the Behavioral Science Department for the FBI, to be a part of an investigation to find a serial killer that has been dubbed Buffalo Bill. Jack Crawford is an important character in the novel, but his role is not as big as it was in Red Dragon, which is the first part to the trilogy. Her role is to question a man named Hannibal Lecter, a notorious former psychologist who was imprisoned for being a cannibal, to gather information on current fugitive Buffalo Bill. FYI, Anthony Hopkins, the man who played Lecter, also won Best Actor at the Academy Awards. Other than that, that basically sums up what's happened so far. The scene you're about to watch is the first meeting between Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter at his prison cell. This scene was particularly chosen because I felt that it's where the movie really kicks off. The scene sets a foundation of what's to come and what the relationship between Clarice and Lecter is like. As an audience member, you pick up on the significance of Lecter and how intelligent he actually is. As you'll watch the clip, you'll be able to pick up the great chemistry between the two actors and how they brought the characters from the novel alive onto the big screen. Okay, so to set up the scene you're about to watch, as I mentioned, it's between the first meeting between Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter, and she visits him at his prison cell where he's been incarcerated for quite a few number of years for being a cannibal. And what she's hoping to do is getting him to open up and give some information about the current investigation she's working on, which is to find serial killer Buffalo Bill. So what you're about to witness is how they interact and how he basically begins to talk to her, which is quite a shock factor for Clarice because she's been warned that he's probably not going to open up to her. Starts off with a medium long shot of Hannibal Lecter to give a visual of what he basically looks like and how his cell is and basically which he's been residing in. So you'll notice that the scene tends to cut a lot between the two actors since there is a glass barrier between them. So the cuts give the effect that they are on opposite sides facing each other. But every now and then, like you can see right now, the angle will show the back of Lecter's head and Clarice's face and movements. Another interesting thing that director Demme does is he slowly zooms in to Lecter's face and it becomes a close-up instead of keeping it a long shot as it originally was. And I thought this was an excellent choice on his part because you'll notice Hopkins has really, really great facial expressions. He winks, he smirks, and he's got like those crinkles by his eyes, and that's what brings Lecter as a character to life. It's those subtle movements in Hopkins' face. So Demme was very good about keeping true to the book. However, there were some things he changed, possibly for the interest of time. Certain lines in dialogue were cut out, such as this moment right here where Lecter offers Clarice a seat. So what happens originally is he calls a police officer to bring a seat, and both the police officer and Clarice are shocked because no one actually expected for Lecter to speak to her. This is why I chose the scene. Like I mentioned earlier, it's the back and forth conversation between the two that really allows for the case Clarice is working on to progress forward. It's their dynamic, however twisted it is, it works and somehow has a benefit for the investigation. So yes, Demme decided to remove the officer, but it still has significance because it's already been mentioned that Lecter's probably not going to speak to her. So as a director, he really brings out only the important parts of the novel which would be impactful. And Jodie Foster really carries out her character because when she does sit, you can see that hint of hesitancy and shock. It's subtle, but it's there.
Memory agents, darling, is what I have.
What this scene also entails is what I actually wrote my essay on, which is the Marxism perspective. We all know that Lecter, despite being in prison, has power over people, including Clarice, because she's there for his help. You know, with her being offered a chair, it may seem polite on behalf of Lecter, but you notice now he's standing over her, and once again, it's enforcing the idea of who's more in control of the situation and who has that power.
Yeah. Jack Crawford must be very busy indeed if he is recruiting help from the student body. Busy hunting that new one, Buffalo Bill. What a naughty boy he is.
So the scene continues to be a close-up for both characters for majority of their conversation, and it's basically to really emphasize the realism of their emotions. You have Clarice, who's a lot more passive, thus her expressions are not as bold as someone such as Lecter, who continues to smirk and show those faces of amusement as he talks to Clarice.
Agents, darling, throw me with your acumen.
It excites him. Most serial killers keep some sort of trophies from their victims.
I didn't.
No. No, you ate yours.
You send that through now.
You'll notice it's at this point does the music actually start to play in the background. Up until this point, it's been quiet because of the conversation, but now there's that very eerie, creepy music playing in the background, and it's very fitting because it's at this point does he kind of begin to realize what's going on. You know, obviously he already knows, but he kind of starts eating Clarice alive, basically, with his words. He starts to show his psychological background as he begins to tear the character Clarice is apart without even raising his voice. The eerie music matches the kind of character Lecter is because he's able to make someone feel uneasy by just changing the tone of his voice, much like the music. He starts to basically belittle her, all while smiling, and it really shows that creepy effect because he's a creepy character. You can see a shadow over Lecter's face, and this relates to the Jungian theory because you can basically say it's his animalistic side that's the most powerful that he just does not bother suppressing at all.
Why don't you look at yourself and write down?
Okay, so the next line is one of my favorite lines in the scene, and probably throughout the entire novel, to be honest.
A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
So this line was actually also changed because instead of Chianti, a different kind of wine is mentioned in the book called Amaron. So you might question why a wine was changed, but I actually found out it's a sciencey joke because he wouldn't be able to eat liver, fava beans, and Chianti with his medication. So it's a hidden threat that he isn't actually on his medication. So yes, guys, Lecter is a complete sociopath. So once again, the dramatic music starts once again as, you know, she gets attacked by spit from Miggs, and everything kind of goes chaotic along with the music. You know, the music also indicates the dramatic effect as he begins to tell Clarice the information she was looking for and what she was there for in the first place. So obviously both the book and the movie are not meant for children. It's not suitable for them because there are messed up things that happen. This movie, for Hollywood purposes, does a great job with visually showing what the book is talking about in a far more dramatic but at the same time realistic way. So it ends off with her leaving the cell, and that's basically the scene. Personally, I prefer this movie scene over the book because I feel it's far more entertaining, and I think Dems, Hopkins, and Foster did an exceptional job executing it. So thanks.